Okay, we're going to get going. If you'll grab whatever drinks or whatever are available for you, we'll get going in just a second. I don't have any announcements, I don't think. Do I? I'm good? Okay. All righty, let's start with a word of prayer then, and we'll dive in. Father, thank you for this opportunity to get together tonight and study your word. And as we survey these different idioms, Father, give us wisdom and grant us illumination by the Holy Spirit so we can apply it and live it out before you. Bless this time now. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, the next idiom we will look at then, several idioms that we'll go through. The first one tonight will be the hand of the Lord was upon somebody. And we'll see this in like Ezra. This Ezra came up from Babylon. He was skilled as a scribe in the law of Moses, which the Lord God had given him. The king granted him all his requests, according to the hand of the Lord his God upon him. And you'll see that many times in passages about different people, different characters in the Bible. And it can mean a varied amount of things. It can mean direct guidance, favor, empowerment. It just pictures God's hand. And when you talk about God's hand, you're talking about God's power and his purposes on someone's life, steering the events and giving success. And so obviously with the ability of Ezra to be able to go back and rebuild Jerusalem and different parts of it, the wall particularly, God was intervening in that situation to allow the circumstances that would cause that to happen. And that's what you have to look in your life. What you're looking for God's hand upon you is not that life is easy. We've talked about that. It's like it is the idea of providence in your life. It is the idea that there's certain things that start aligning in your life that you can't explain, and that alignment is supernatural. And that's typically the providential miracles you will see in your life. You typically won't see grade A miracles. If you do, you're very fortunate to see grade A miracles. Some people do, some people don't. But the main miracle you will see in your life is providential miracles. That's God's hand working in your life, on you, opening doors, closing doors, and doing those kinds of things that guide you. And so, you might say, I landed a job and there was no way I could have landed that job, and it just kind of fell in my lap and things kind of lined up, and that's what we're talking about. Most people don't see that as the hand of God, and so they miss it. They're not seeing the supernatural. They just see it as luck, or, I was in the right place at the right time, and it's unfortunate because that's what God's signpost is for people. Your history, when you look back at your history in your life, you should be able to see God working in your life to align certain things. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things that happen in our life we don't have answers for, and we have a lot of questions that we want to ask God, and your questions will be answered one day by God when you're in his presence. But what he wants you to focus in on is where you actually do see the hand of God, not what you don't understand. Satan wants you to focus on what you don't understand. He asks you to trust him on that you don't understand. But in those things you can see, how you met somebody, how things aligned, how you went to school, or how you did that, that's God's hand on you. And so all of us can look at that and say, yeah, there's no way I could have gotten here without that and that happening, and it was obviously a miracle of God. But what we see then is when you talk about God's hand, or you look at it in your life, what you're seeing is God's involvement in your life. And a lot of people, I hate to say it, Christianity is really prone to teach this, that God only intervenes in your life when, there's desperation and you need him at all costs. And what's happening, though, that's kind of a form of deism, where God's just winding up the clock and he lets it run and he never gets involved. He's actually involved all the time in your life. And so we believe that he is active and he is present and he is doing things in your life constantly, for things like protection, provision, all kinds of different things, obviously empowerment, those types of stuff. So for Ezra, he got divine favor from the king of Persia, and obviously that helped. Sometimes you get divine favor with your boss. Sometimes you get divine favor with a coach. Sometimes you get divine favor with who knows, somebody. And sometimes that person likes you, and you really can't figure out why they like you. They just like you. And sometimes that's God's favor coming upon you. And the person will be disposed to you to help you. And when you see that, don't just chalk it up to human involvement. Just see behind the scenes that's God, the hand of the Lord on you. The hand of the Lord can also symbolize, obviously, judgment, but in this kind of context, you're seeing in a positive sense on his people. But the hand of the Lord also can come in judgment. But anyway, like I said, you always want to look at the hand of God. Now, this is important, especially in trying to figure out things in your current life. Sometimes, like when I'm counseling with people, they'll come to me and say they can't see God in their life at all. They look back in their past and they're focusing in on all the bad things that happened in their life, and they can't see the good things that either came out of it, or that God was there, or that God had provided this or provided that for them during the midst of all the bad stuff. They just focus on the bad stuff. And when you focus in on only the bad stuff, you will go blind to all the other things that God has done for you. And I call them the 10 P's or 11 P's. I don't know how many I have, but there's like protection, providence, provision, all these different terms. And so I'll ask people, I go, okay, let's start off in your life and let's go through it. Let's go through your history. What's your earliest memory? And sometimes it's a good memory, sometimes it's a bad memory. And so we go down through that, and even taking them through the bad stuff. And I said, even that this happened, did you see God's hand involved in that? Did you sense that he was there or whatever? And they can't. So sometimes it takes a little unpacking. And what I typically have to do, and I got this idea from Norm Wright, who's the best grief counselor on the planet. He said typically what will happen is you can't remember a lot of things. And what happens is if you start writing things down, when you're chronicling things that happen to you, it'll pull out from your memory bank where you have categorized those things and you have forgotten. And so if you'll write down the event that happened to you, maybe it was bad, once you start writing, your memory will start be re-engaged and you'll start remembering things again. And that pulls out those memories. And then while you're writing and it's on the paper, you go back and you look at the things surrounding the events to see if you can see God's power, God's presence, God's provision, God's, whatever, bringing people to your life, all that stuff. And what will happen is you'll start seeing how God loves you. Like a lot of people say, well, bad things happen to me, so, I didn't experience love. And that's actually not true, because even though you didn't get the proper love from whoever, maybe it's your parents or something like that or whatever, what you have to do is look around and you will see that God was bringing you people that actually loved you, that showed you that love. And, whether it's a coach, a teacher, a friend, or whatever. And the problem is you tend to forget that. And you just look at where you didn't get the love from and the expectation, and you miss that he was sending everyone around you to provide that extra measure of love that you lost from that. And so like I was telling my pastors this week when I try to teach them how to counsel a little bit, I said, the problem with a lot of people is they will look at what they're lacking instead of what they have. And it's kind of like Adam and Eve in the garden. It's the idea that you could have all the trees, but you can't have that one. And what tree did they want? Well, I want that one. Yeah, but you have all the other trees. And so what ends up happening is Satan makes you look at the limitations that you have rather than you can eat of any of the trees. You have all that available to you. And then, you just can't have that one. You can't have it all. And the problem is we do tend to want it all, but then we focus in on what we don't have. So, we were talking about like people's abilities. Like say you wanted to be rich and famous or whatever, you wanted to achieve this in your life and you wanted to achieve that in your life and stuff like that. And I'll take myself for example. I didn't plan to do this. I had a whole different plan in my life when I started, and God had a different plan, obviously, and his plan's better. But if you go through this scenario, and this is where you have to be totally honest with yourself, if I were to get exactly what I wanted, what would it actually do to me? And that's why God puts the limitation on me and puts the limitation on you. Because if I did get what I wanted, I probably wouldn't even know him. I probably wouldn't want to know him. I probably wouldn't have any relation. And that's a pretty good hunch. Because if people are given what they want, they won't have a need for God. I can pretty much guarantee I wouldn't have a need for God if I did what I wanted to do and I got what I wanted to get. And I brought in the concept of Acts chapter 17 that he puts us all in certain times and boundaries and places. Paul makes his argument at the Areopagus and says, look, the reason you live at this point in time in history and the reason you live in this place on planet Earth is so that you will know him and so that you will reach out for him and grope for him. And the idea that Paul's trying to say is God has situated everybody in their life at a certain point in history and a place in time to give them the best chance possible for knowing him. That's why you live here. That's why you don't live in the 1800s. That's why you don't live in the 1700s. This is why you live in America and you don't live in Zimbabwe. Because if he did put you over there, it would give you a less of a chance to know him. So everyone's where they're at and in time based on their ability to give them the best ability, I guess, to come to know him. That being the case, you can expand that a little bit further as far as our limitations and what we're able to accomplish in our lives. And if you look at the limitations, like I was telling the staff, I said, look, let's just pretend you wanted to be smarter than you are right now. What if God gave you 5 more points of IQ, but those 5 points would take you away from him? You get what I'm saying? So you like, well, no, do you want to be smarter and not know him? No, I don't. Okay, well, that's the problem. And so some of the answers to us of why we're limited is because you wouldn't know him. You wouldn't seek him. You wouldn't want him. If you had $1 million or you won the Powerball, which was like a 1-point-something billion dollars, what was the Powerball? Let's say you won Powerball. And I know what you're thinking. I would be a philanthropist and I would help all these ministries. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. That's a lie. And quit lying to yourself. You know you wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would just take the money and run. And I would disappear and I'd buy an island and buy a jet. And I would live on the beach every day. I know what I would do. I wouldn't be a philanthropist. I would just be gone. I'd be selfish. I would take the money and die, I guess. And people think, well, no, I'd be just this awesome philanthropist. No, you wouldn't. That's not how it goes. And so you think, okay, you start looking at the other limitations you have. Those limitations are meant to keep you in a relationship to him and humble and seeking him, because that's why. So what Satan wants you to do is focus on the limitations that you have rather than what you have, and realize that the limitations help you to know him. That's what it is. Because otherwise you wouldn't know him. And that's kind of the idea behind Acts 17. So that's where you get this idea that looking at the hand of God on your life, you may think that your life has not went according to plan. Okay? And don't get me wrong, God didn't plan evil for your life. He doesn't do that. Does he allow things to happen to us? Absolutely. But the plan that he has and what he's trying to accomplish, that aspect of what he's trying to accomplish in us is going according to plan. It is going according to plan. Now, does he bring in the human factor of free will? Absolutely. That's part of the equation. And, a lot of times we make those decisions to go in the wrong direction, and we stunt our growth, and we prevent ourselves from reaching all that we had. But nonetheless, you will be able to see the plan he had for you when he lays it out before you, and you will see whether or not you accomplished it or you came up short, because it's your choice. And so he has a plan. That's why Ephesians says you were created for these good works. The good works were already pre-planned. Not your life, but the good works he intended for you to do has already been pre-planned. That's why he gifted you the way he did, so that you could accomplish that. So it's up to you if you're going to accomplish the whole plan. Maybe you and I get to 80%. Maybe you and I get to 70%. Maybe you and I get to 90%. We want to maximize it, hopefully, but we might fall short based on our own free will and our own decisions. So, but that doesn't mean that what's happening to you is not the plan of God. He's allowing it to shape and mold you and get you to where you need to be. You can even say in your own personal life, some of the tragedies that you have went through have gotten you to a place that you will never have achieved on your own. You just wouldn't have got there. Whether it's wisdom, whether it's understanding, whether it's a different perspective in life, you wouldn't have got there on your own. He had to allow certain things to come in to get you to where you need to be spiritually. So that's a hard one, but that's what he's doing. So the whole point is God's hand is very active on your life. He knows every inch of what's happening to you from the day you were created by him until he takes you home or to the rapture. So, I don't get into this Christian deism that's happening right now. That is a big problem in churches of teaching deism, and that God's really not interested in your life unless you have a major problem, and that's not the case. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Set one's face. You'll see this even in the Gospels about Jesus setting his face to Jerusalem. And the idea of face, we've talked about that a little bit. But what this means is it doesn't mean physically looking in a direction. It means your direction in life, that you set your face at something. You're pointing your compass at a certain direction. And the fact that you have direction, it's not just the fact that you know the direction to go in, it's the fact that you have resolve that you will make it all the way. That's the idea. So when it says that Christ set his face to Jerusalem, he was going all the way to the cross, is the idea. That this is what he's going to accomplish, and he's going to be determined to get it done. So this is a big deal about life. What we find in life, and this is even from a psychological standpoint, that people do better if they have direction in their life, if they have goals. And so whether it's secular or Christian, what they find out from psychology, and this is, the psychology is using this. This is where you get this from. And it's the idea that for someone to have meaning, they have to have short-term goals, and they have to have long-term goals. You will see Paul do the same thing in his letters. You will see Paul write, and if you're picking up on it, he will talk about his short-term goals, and then he'll talk about long-term goals. And he does that with the Corinth church, if I remember right, and a few other ones. And it's funny, he's putting that in there. And if you notice, he's got to be a type A type of guy, because who thinks like that I'm going to do a short-term goal and long-term goal? So he's very on purpose about what he's doing. But that's how life should be. That's how our lives should be, that you have direction. Look, man, a lot of our young people don't have direction. The reason they don't have direction is they don't have identity. And because they don't have identity, they don't have a direction, so they float aimlessly, and they don't know what to do. And what's happening, especially with our younger people, is they are floating around all through their 20s. And then they get into their early 30s, and they still are floating around and don't know what they need to be doing. And so that's we don't want that, obviously. And adults can get like that as well, older adults. They just don't know what their life's about. Okay, so you find direction in life because by looking at several things. You look at your identity in Christ. You look at your gifting. physical and supernatural. You look at your history and you look at your pain and trauma. And you bring all that together to give yourself the identity about what you should be doing. And then that sets the course. Okay, so the course then is set, and it's like that's what you need to be doing. But here's the problem. A lot of people know the course, but they're not willing to put the effort into it because it's hard. So they see the course and they don't like it. And they're like, dude, man, that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to take a lot of sacrifice. That's going to take a lot of gutting it out, man. That's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So this is the problem. And sometimes in counseling, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink. And I'll say, well, this is the course that you need to take. This is what I see God doing. And you believe that, yes. Now you have to set your face towards that. And you have to use determination and discipline and everything else to get you there. You have to be, and the biblical term is perseverance. You have to persevere, which means patient endurance. So every day you got to grind it out like Rocky, man. You got to go on your run and you got to do this. And it's part of discipline. The problem is most Christians don't want to be disciplined. They see the direction, but it's going to take sacrifice and discipline. They don't want to do it. And so they back off. And what ends up happening is a lot of Christians sell themselves short and settle for lesser things. Good things, but they're less. And the good things that Satan will always do that to you to distract you from doing the very best. And the good things are good. You know, no one's going to get on to you for doing that. And no one will know other than you and God that you settled to do a good thing. But it's like the tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel are going into the promised land. And they're going in with Joshua. And then 3 of the tribes decide, we're not going to go in, we're fine. We're not going to go in because it's a lot of fighting, a lot of work. We're fine settling outside the land in the Jordanian area, southern Jordanian area. And Joshua says, no. You guys might want to settle outside the land, but you're going to come in the land and fight with us regardless. So you either, choose your poison. Either you come in the land and fight with us or you're going to fight no matter what, and you can settle outside. But that's what happens to a lot of Christians. They just don't want to go in there and fight. So they settle outside the land, and when you settle, man, it seems easy at first, and you think you're okay, but man, the older you get, the more regret you start having. And that regret just keeps you up at night. You start having nightmares because you're looking in the mirror at yourself, and you're like, I could have accomplished this, but I was too stinking lazy. I could have done this, but I didn't want to make the sacrifice. And it starts plaguing you when you get into your 40s, and then you get into your 50s and 60s, and it just every decade it gets worse and worse about the regret of what you didn't do. That is a horrible way to live. You do not want that. And God doesn't want you doing that. He wants you saying, go for it. Go for exactly what I'm calling you to do, and be willing to put in the sweat and blood and tears. And then when you look at yourself in the mirror, you won't have any regrets. You will say, I gave it all. I did everything I possibly could. It's like when we played baseball or played football or anything, when you stepped over that foul line and you got into the playing field, man, it is on. And you leave everything on that field. You don't back off. You go like an animal until you're off that field. And that's how we were trained to play. And we became different when we played. When we put the uniform on, we stepped on between the foul lines, we were different. And that's how you have to be with life. You have to take life very aggressively. This life will beat you up, and it's meant to beat you up. Satan wants to beat you up and keep you down. And you have to learn to fight and go after that. So part of that is you can get direction, but then that discipline and determination has to kick in. It has to. And it's an everyday thing. It's an everyday sacrifice. But here's the thing. It's what gets you out of bed. It's what gets you moving. That's what you're getting up for. And what happens is you have purpose, and that gives you meaning, and that gives you a better health, and that gives you a longer life, believe it or not. When you have purpose and meaning, and you're getting up in the morning, and you know what you're about, dude, you're on fire. No one can stop you. It's this aimlessness that's killing people. Our poor kids, they've been hooked on video games from the time they were born, and now they're playing video games. I have people complain to me in counseling that their husbands come home from work, they get on the video games from 6 o'clock to 2 in the morning. And you're like, hey man, what's going on with you, dude? Well, they're not maturing, that's number one, but they have no drive. There's no drive. Where's the drive in it? Look, this is Americana. I mean, we all grew up in Americana. We're fiercely independent. We are fiercely about, making a life for ourselves and doing good and doing so well that I can pass stuff on to my kids. You know what's happening? They're not worried about passing anything on to their kids. In fact, they don't have anything to pass on. Nothing's to pass on. You know why? Because they were floating aimlessly in life. And there is no inheritance for the next generation. And it's like, whoa, what happened here, man? What did you do? You floated because you had no direction. You were just trying to exist and trying to live. So the essence of life is where you get this meaning of setting your face. Ask yourself right now, what is your face set to? What is the direction? What does God want out of you? And are you determined to go after it, right? That's the idea. When God sets his own personal face, he accomplishes it 100% of the time, okay? When God does it. Humans, depends. It depends. It depends on your resolve. It depends on all the other motivations, the motivations of rewards, the motivations of having a fulfilled life, meaningful. It's not going to be easy. Please don't understand that. A purpose and meaningful life, when you're setting your face, think about this. What was the Messiah's life when he set his face towards Jerusalem? Where is he heading to? Suffering. He is heading to sacrifice, which is the essence of life. That's the whole paradigm of life, is sacrifice. If you learn how to sacrifice, and look, it's real simple, delayed gratification. I sacrifice now for my future self. That's what it's all about, right? I don't want to betray my future self right now by being lazy and not doing what I need to do. So that's what I want to tell my kids. Hey man, if you're floating around, you're betraying yourself at 35. Because at 35, you want to come back and kick your rear end for what you did. Because you will be so mad and upset about what you did and squandered your 20s, you will want to come back and beat yourself up. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. You give it all, and you use that resolve to accomplish it. Okay. So it's unwavering determination, it's perseverance, all that stuff, it's steadfast, and we don't buckle under the pressure, and we're not distracted. Because if you get that singular focus and you're laser beamed on it, nothing can distract you at that point in time. Okay? And it was the idea of Peter walking on the water. Remember that? He started walking on the water as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, but he got his focus off and he paid attention to the distractions, the wave and the winds, right? And so he got distracted and so he sank. That's the idea. So you have to be laser beamed, not distracted, and you have to be tough enough not to buckle under the pressure. What kind of pressure is going to get put on you? What Satan puts at, he'll throw everything at you. Satan will do everything to discourage you, everything to put the pressure on, okay? He can't kill you, okay? And he can't stop you. You understand that? He can't stop you. But he's a dog on a leash, and he barks. And the problem is people get afraid of the bark, okay? He can do a lot of stuff to you, no doubt about that. He can frighten you, make you afraid. He can discourage you. He can bring people at you to mess you up totally. But he can't stop you. That's what you have to understand. If you will just push through, you will make it. That's how God makes a way for you. But you have to push through. You have to just buckle down and go for it. A lot of Christians don't. It's too hard. I'm hoping that's not you. Hoping that's not me. I hope I can persevere to the end. I hope that's the goal for everybody. But that's what it takes. Anyway, next one. According to the wisdom of your God, which is in your hand, which is kind of weird. We understand the wisdom of God, but it's in your hand. What does that mean? will literally mean as the wisdom of your God that is in your hand. The idiom is in your hand. It does not mean physical possession, obviously. It means that you have been entrusted with responsibility and a divinely imparted ability to do something. So this goes in line with what we're talking about, right? That God will give you these gifts that you have as a steward of them, and you're responsible for using them. You're responsible for attaining the goal. And this, again, their spiritual gifts are divinely imparted. You got them when you got saved, and your physical gifts that you have developed were divinely imparted as well. And so all of that is made for you. So that when God created you, that's what he did. In the context of this, Artaxerxes tells Ezra to appoint judges according to the wisdom of your God, which is in your hand, basically recognizing Ezra's God-given authority to govern and teach. And so he had that gift. And so that's why Artaxerxes sees the gift in Ezra and allows him to do that. Anyway, I want you to think about what has been entrusted to you, what are your gifts, and who are you responsible for? Okay? You cannot just say, I'm responsible for myself. No kidding. Everyone's responsible for themselves. But part of your gifting is to serve others. And you should be able to say, I am responsible for so-and-so, 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 this person, that person, this person, that person, that person, that person. And so the gifting is for others. It's not for you, it's for others. And so you have to think, okay, here's what I've been entrusted with, and who am I responsible for? Now that's important. Because if you can't name who you're responsible for, you're in isolation. You should be able to say, well, I'm responsible for this group or this Bible study or this person, my neighbor or whatever. I'm responsible for them, and I'm using my gifts to minister to them. That's the idea. Ezra, I want you to think about the context of who he's responsible for. He's going to go back and they're going to rebuild Jerusalem. He's thinking to himself, I am responsible for the nation of Israel. I must do this for the nation. I must do this for my people. That's what's motivating him. He's not saying, I'm going to do this so I can be self-actualized as a New Ager. He's not saying that. That's a New Age idea, self-actualization. If it's all about you, you're going to crash and burn. When you get on the ticket, it's about others, and I'm responsible for them, okay, makes total sense. Ezra's doing it for his nation. And again, when Ezra's doing this, it's not from his own, he's so brilliant, it's because God deposited that stuff in him, those giftings in him. And that's how we all are. None of us in here are self-made people. Everything comes from God. Our breath that comes out of our lungs is from God. And so, yeah, but we're responsible for that. That's the idea. So, the idea and the application is whatever God places in our hand, the gifting, okay, you have to exercise that. And look, you could say, I don't have anything. But that's the same thing he said to Moses. What's in your hand, Moses? A rod. Okay, we're going to use the rod. Okay, it's that. David's going to fight Goliath. I told you this last week. What does he have? He has a staff, a sling, and 5 stones. That's it. And you can change the whole world, just whatever's in your hand. So you have to look, what is in my hand? What has God placed in my hand? And that means that whatever you have means you're competent to fulfill the mission God gave you. You are totally competent to do that. And so you have to trust that. And that's where your confidence comes. You can do this because of God. He wants this to happen. He needs you to do this. It's your assignment. Do you know when the angels were created, every angel was created with an assignment. They were supposed to do something. And so when the angels rebelled, the third of the angels along with Satan, they rebelled against their assignments. And so the interesting thing about demons and fallen angels, well, fallen angels particularly, in case studies of exorcisms and deliverance of them, sometimes they will talk to the people that is doing the deliverance or the exorcism, And the exorcist or deliverance guy will say, what was your assignment before you fell? And they'll say, whatever. And what you find out is the demon or the fallen angel is doing the opposite of his call. So if he was called to foster people going into the ministry, his now duties will be to discourage people from going into the ministry. If his job was to provide chastity and holiness in sexual matrimony, then his job will be to do sexual perversion in the kingdom of darkness. They do the opposite of what they're called to do when they fall. But what does that tell you? Many of them, or all of them, had an assignment and were gifted specifically as individual creations of God to do specific things. And a third of them rebelled against that. We are no different. We are no different from them. Everybody in this room was created for a unique assignment in this life to do it. And only you can do it. I can't do it. The person sitting next to you can't do it. Only you have this unique gifting. And that's how the angels are. They are unique. Yes, they're angels by category, but do you realize that every angel is a unique creation? And everyone's different. They're all different. They have different looks. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are smarter, some are more powerful. But it just depends on what their assignment is. And so that's how we are. And a good application in all this is when you're an unbeliever, you will do the opposite of what you were actually called to do. That tends to happen. You do the opposite of what you were called to do. So, it's kind of you never get away from these spiritual realities. They kind of apply across the board. Anyway, the Hebraism, what my God had put into in my heart to do. And this is where we have the concept we find from Nehemiah, and that he had put on Nehemiah's heart to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. At the time, Ezra and Nehemiah, there's probably already about 54,000 Jews already living in Israel and living among the ruins after the Babylonian exile. But God put it on Nehemiah's heart to go rebuild the walls. Okay. And again, what is the heart? The heart in Hebrew is the center of your being. It's where your belief structure is, where your inner self is. This is where your thoughts, your decisions come from, your emotions, all that stuff, okay? It's in your soul. Anyway, when God puts it on your heart, the center of your being, he puts a conviction there. He implants a burden on there, a desire that you cannot explain naturally, okay? It would benefit in Nehemiah nothing personally to say, let's go from Babylon all the way back to Israel and rebuild the walls, had that not been implanted by God. That's a God thing. And here's the thing about your assignment. It's implanted on your heart. You know intuitively what you need to be doing if you will discover it. It's there. It's already implanted there. I knew what I was supposed to be doing before I ever did it. I knew it years before I ever surrendered to it. I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't want to do it. I just knew it had been placed there, and I didn't like it. And I'm like, no, and no. I'm not doing that. So you'll know it before you even do it. And so God is putting that on you. Now, you can deny it like I did. You can pretend it's not there. Say, no, I have different plans. I want to do this with my life. I want to do that with my life. And you can do that. And if you deny that, you will have the free will to say no to it. Okay? If you deny it, you will be one of the most miserable people on planet Earth if you say no to the call. Whatever that burden is, whatever he placed on your heart. I can't tell you how many guys I have ran into who said no to God about going into the ministry, and now it's too late for them now, and or whatever for them in their home mindset, And they will literally tell me they didn't want to do it because they couldn't make any money. So they went for the money. And guys, I can tell you this, they live with extreme regret because they went for the money. And what it shows you is it's not worth it, man. If he's calling you to do something, whether it's to stack pins at the bowling alley, yeah, you're going to make money, but if he puts that on your heart and that's what you do is stack pins at the bowling alley, then you go stack pins at the bowling alley. And you will be fulfilled if that's what your calling is. But you have the right to say no. He doesn't force things on you, but he will put it on your heart. And here's the thing, you will feel it's a burden, and you will feel it doesn't go away. And you say, well, I'll ignore it. And so you can ignore it 6 months. I ignored it for probably 3 years. 3 years, ignoring. But it doesn't go away. It just doesn't go away. It's just right there on your heart, and and here's the thing. It starts getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's the only thing I can describe it as. It's a weight. And then at some point, you surrender to it, and you say, I have to do this. I have no other option. There is no other option to go sell insurance. There is no other option to go do this or go do that or go do that. I have to do this. And that's when it sinks so deep, and that's where you surrender to it. Now, it's not a call to ministry. It could be a call to do whatever in your life. So I don't want you to confuse that as a vocational call to be an ambassador. I'm just giving my own opinion on what it did to me. But for you, it might be something different. It could be, whatever, a job change. It could be this, it could be that, whatever. And that pressure will just keep, it starts becoming like a weight, and it doesn't go away. It just waits there and sinks, and it's just deeper and deeper and deeper in your soul. That's how you know you're called to do whatever you're called to do. That's how you know. Now, it seems subjective, but I'm just trying to tell you what it feels like and what this is. If he puts it on your heart, that's all I can tell you. And it becomes a burden. So Nehemiah then recognizes that he has a mission to go rebuild the walls, and so he does that. It's not self-originated. It is not you thinking, I'm going to go do great things for God. Good luck on that one, because that ain't going to happen. You try to do great things for God, you will throw yourself off the temple, and he will not rescue you. He puts what he wants you to do on your heart. That's when you know you should do it, and that's how you have faith and the confidence to go out and do it, because you know that's what he's doing. When you say, I've heard pastors, and they're so wrong in doing this, just go out and achieve great things for God. That's crazy. That's insane. That's doing stuff that God has not called you to do, and it's going to flop. It's crazy. I can't believe they even say things like that. But anyway, it's the idea that God's working through you. This is why it's very important to you to know your plan and your purpose. I cannot overemphasize this. Look at Philippians 2:13 says, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. It is God who's working in you to do that. He wants to accomplish that through you. And that's what your rewards are based on. He has all your rewards ready for you of what he had planned for you to accomplish. And I hope you find that. So, that's how you find out if it's truly from God. Now, look, there's a lot of guys in ministry, and I'm just going to tell you right now, just from the ministry standpoint, there's a lot of mama called, papa sent guys in ministry. Okay? They're really not called. They felt pressure from mom and dad. Dad's a pastor or whatever, and that pressure, I better conform. This is the family business, so I'll just conform and go to seminary. It's like, dude, that guy has no call. He has no gifting. You have to have the gifts. And if you don't have the gifts, how can you say you're going to be a pastor? It's just bad. There's a lot of that going on. And a lot of guys go into the ministry, they feel pressure from other people, for pressure from that, and they're really not called. And so I tell you this, man, there's a good percentage of guys in ministry that have absolutely no business in ministry. Absolutely none, okay? And it's because it's self-generated. It's a lot of self-generated stuff. It's not God-driven. What you're looking for in your life when God places the call on you, here's what will happen to you. your first reaction will be, all right, I'm all in. That's not the right reaction. Because when you find someone like that, I'm all in, that they're not thinking. They're not even thinking. They're not counting the cost. When he puts a burden on you, you're going to like, oh, no. What? That's the first reaction. That's the first reaction. It's the reaction Moses had. I mean, you're going to talk to Pharaoh. I can't. I'm slow of speech. That's right, exactly. The reluctant leader. If someone says, I'm all in, no. They're not counting costs and they're crazy. Don't think like that. Okay? So when he calls you, you're going to like, oh man, that's really going to be hard. And there's going to be part of you that, I don't know if I want to do all that. There's a part of you that knows you can do it, that you already are prepared and you have the gifting for it. But there's a part of you that doesn't want to put the work in. Okay? There's going to be, it's that tension you're going to feel. Now, if it's mama called, papa sent, it will die. It will die. If it's a conviction from humans, it won't last. Okay? Unless you're trying to impress somebody, a girlfriend, a wife, a spouse, a dad, a mom, whatever. And the minute they die, then the whole thing's over, right? You have no one, mom and dad are gone, you have no one to impress, and you're like, what am I doing in this job? But that's the thing. That's trying to help you to discern how God works. And anyway, here's the good news. If he calls you to something, he will enable you. Guaranteed, okay? He will give you probably already have the gifts, but here's the thing about the gifts. You might already have the gifts, but you have to develop them. So like with my gift of pastor-teacher, I had to learn how to teach properly. I had to learn how to navigate the scriptures, and I had to learn how to prepare a lesson and how to put it all together. And so if you would have heard me early on, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. But I was learning how to do it, and it's kind of like an art and science. The more you do the gift, the better you become at the gift, and the more confident you become. And then it becomes natural. And that's what you want to get with your gifting. You want to get to your gifting to where you don't even think about it anymore. That's how far you want to develop your gifts. Like it just comes natural. And the best way I can picture it, it's like hitting a home run. If you've ever hit a home run, you actually can't feel the home run when you make contact because it hits the sweet spot of the bat, you hit the right part of the ball, and you actually don't feel it. It's like a weird feeling. And you know you've connected. When you have developed your gifts to maturity, that's how the giftings will feel with you. It's like second nature. You can do it with your eyes closed, if that makes sense. Not early on, but later in the game. That's the idea. And so whatever gifting you have, that's where you have to develop that. Whether it's evangelism, whether that's administration, whether that's encouragement, or whatever that might be. Maybe you have the gift of helps, but you still have to learn about that gift and how it works. You have to be able to see when people need help and discern that. Discernment is another gift that people have, and the ability to read people. Well, you just don't have the ability to read instantaneously. You have some of it, but it's embryonic, and you have to develop it. But man, if you've been developing it for 30 years, wow, someone that has a gift of discernment can spot things like no tomorrow, man. It's all over. They can spot it because they're really adept at it. And that's how you want to get. You want to get to that point. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't end when you die. Your gifting that you're developing is for the next life. It's for eternity. Because the way you're gifted now is how God wants to use you in eternity. So this right now is practice, actually, for the kingdom age and then for eternity. So nothing is going to be left behind as far as what you have developed. It goes on. It moves on. And so a lot of the things you're learning right now about your life will be used in the next. And so, wow. So God doesn't waste anything? Absolutely not. He doesn't waste anything. So what I'm trying to get across to you is there's a continuation of your life and your skills and all that you're developing that continues to go on. So don't think it just stops when you die or then when you retire. Okay, all my gifts stop and I'm done. Or the rapture happens and I'm done. That's not when it stops. You're going to get rewarded for what you did here, but they go on. They go on to be more developed. And who knows, we might get more giftings in the Messianic kingdom or in eternity or something like that. It might go on. But anyway, a lot can be said about that. Anyway, any questions on that stuff? I know it's a lot. A lot of them actually dovetailed into our callings. So there's a couple questions here.
So, Pastor Brandon, you said that the fallen angels, their job in heaven was to encourage the ministry. And
not all of them. Some. I just gave one.
It's like a generalization.
The what now?
It's like a generalization. So
I've given an example of one case study where one of the fallen angels' jobs before he fell was to encourage people to go into the ministry.
Okay, but prior to the fall of man, I'm confused. What ministry would they have been going into in a perfect world?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Angels had all knowledge. That's why there's no savior for them. They were given full knowledge when they sinned. So they knew the full plan of God.
Okay.
So that's different. They knew God was going to create us. And that's one of the reasons they rebelled. But they all had an assignment, whether that assignment was with Israel or they knew about anything. They had the full plan. Now, they didn't have all the plan, but they knew that God was going to use humans, and he was going to do what he did with us, and that's part of the problem. So angels sinned in full knowledge of the plan. That's what made the rebellion that much worse, and that's why there is no redemption. We sinned, and we didn't know anything, hardly. We're clueless. God didn't come to us and say, guys, here's all the plan. Now make your decision. He didn't do that. We have very limited knowledge, and that's why you can see why our redemption is different through the Messiah. Theirs is a whole different ballgame. They're in the presence of God. He says, this is the plan we're going to do. Are you on board? And a third of them said, no, we are not going to do that. So some of their assignments, what do good angels do? Their assignments is to us. Doesn't the writer of Hebrews says they are ministering spirits that minister to us? So they are assigned to us. Every person has at least 2 guardian angels assigned to them. And those guardian angels are meant to encourage us to do certain things in our lives. Now, that's what I said. In one case study, one fallen angel admitted that his job was to encourage men to go into the ministry. But now he does the opposite. He discourages men to go into the ministry. So they will always do the opposite. They all had assignment. Well, another case study, some angels were given the assignment to be in the heavens at the birth of the Messiah. They rejected that. So guess what they do? Oppose everything that does with Christmas.
Okay, one more question. This is a little bit off topic, but this day and age, do you believe that Satan gloats when he gets us to sin?
Oh, yeah.
To God, like in conversation form.
That he gloats before God? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. That's why he's accusing us day and night before God, especially if we go unconfessed. And that's what the issue is. And so he's asking God to pound us and wants us to pound, and knows God will do it if we don't confess and repent. And so that's exactly that. So he can't take us to hell, but he can destroy us. And just like with Balaam, how are you going to destroy believers? Well, you destroy them by bringing in the judgment of God on them. And so that's the thing. Unbelievers, totally different story. He wants to kill all of us, no doubt about that. But he works to not only take them to hell with him, but to destroy them physically. And if he could destroy us physically, he would do it too, but we're off limits physically to him. He can't touch us physically, according to Hebrews chapter 2. But yeah, gloating, yes, totally. He hates us, absolutely. They hate us, the fallen. They absolutely despise us. They hate us to the very core of their being, because we're going to be given almost everything Satan wanted. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you, this is off topic too, could you explain to me, I was unclear last time you mentioned this, that evil keeps growing, and even in hell, evil can grow. So I don't know if they have things they can do in hell like we have things to do in heaven or not, but why would God allow evil to grow after he's already judged them? Why would he allow it to grow for eternity?
Well, first of all, he's honoring them. Believe it or not, hell is an honoring of them because he's honoring their free will. So that's the first thing you have to understand. It's an act of love, actually, to God to not even just extinguish them out of existence. The fact that he lets them continue to live, but the problem is if they have a sin nature and they're with the demons, then they're not going to get better because they get worse just by the nature of sin. The nature of sin never gets lessened, it gets worse. Okay, so then what are you going to do with these creatures that you have created and you're not going to annihilate, because he never annihilates his creation, so he quarantines them. It doesn't empower them, no. They're actually in a ruinated state. So what the idea you want to think about, the Greek word is the idea of dropping a light bulb, and that light bulb is breaking on the ground and it's in a ruinated state. That's the state they're in hell. And the problem with it is the more you're with your sin nature and you have no redeeming quality in you, and you've been removed from the common grace of God. Like right now, pagans live in the common grace of God. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. The sunshine is here, and they benefit from God's goodness even though they don't like him. What happens to them when they're completely removed from his goodness, isolated, and they're with only their sin nature? There's no redeeming quality. There's no grace. The sin nature continues to get worse. As today, the perfect example is someone continues to go unsaved, they do get worse the older they live. That's just the nature of sin. It never gets better. It only gets worse. So he doesn't stop that. He just allows it, but they're quarantined. So that's what you have to. You start with the nature of sin. What does it do? It metastasizes. Sin is a cancer. That's why it is likened to leaven being put in a loaf. So what's the point there? It doesn't stay there. It goes through and permeates the entire loaf. It's that idea. That's the nature of sin. So when someone has a disposition like that, that's what it does. It will continue to corrupt them and corrupt them and corrupt them and corrupt them. It's awful. Hell and lake of fire, this is why God warns about it, is awful. Absolutely the worst. But it's an honoring of their free will. It's giving them exactly what they want. And that's the sad part about it, right? Yeah, go right over here.
Can Satan use unbelievers to attack believers?
Totally. He does it all the time, man. And in fact, that's his best strategy, is to use useful idiots like unbelievers to come against us. And so it could be in your own family, it could be friends, it could be some punk out there or whatever. But what Satan does is he uses unsuspecting people because they're part of his kingdom no matter what. They don't even know. And he will use them, and sometimes he will instigate and put things in their head to say to you or do to you to incite you. And what does Satan want to do? He wants to draw you into you sinning. So I'll use this person to incite you and inflame you, whether verbally or physically or something, and to take you down. And that's a pattern like, no tomorrow. And he also will use the opposite sex. Typically, it's the opposite sex.
Hello, testing one. Okay, good, awesome. Thank you. So, my question is this sort of about understanding. Okay, this is my gifting. These are my talents, and so on and so forth. When it comes to taking the spiritual gifts testing, as far as answering all those questions, how reliable would you say is that test? And outside of that, is there a what other methods would you
Yeah.
recommend for understanding that this is what I'm called to do?
Sure. So the testing is just a starting ground, but then here's where the real proving ground is. So that's the starting ground. But the proving ground is you got to go out and do it. So here's the thing. If you say, okay, it's telling me I have the gift of teaching, I better go out and try to do it. But where would I start? I'm not going to start in front of adults. I'm going to start teaching children. Maybe I'll work myself up to youth, get used to that. If I'm good there, then I'll try the next set with adults, see how good I'm there, and we move on. And so you have to start small, and then you grow from there. So you have to just do it. You have to get out there and do it.
Okay, and just one more question. Can that also apply to, well, let's say a secular job? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Because God might call you to be a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and that is your call. It's not a call to like being a pastor, but you might be called to sell insurance. You might be called to be a used car salesman. You might be called to sell surfboards. I don't know. But whatever he calls you to do, that's your mission field, and he's going to use that to expand the kingdom through you in that area. And so what you have to understand is you don't want to have what we call a secular sacred dichotomy. And what do I mean by that is, well, anytime I'm at church, that's my sacred, and then when I'm away from church, that's secular. Oh, no. Everything is sacred. Your whole life is sacred. You don't have to work at the church to have a sacred calling. You can, like I say, you can be, work at Steve's Candy making candies. If that is what he called you to do, then go do it with all your might and be the best candy maker you could possibly be, if he's called you to do that. But that's the thing, is you got to make sure that's what you're called to do. If you are called, you'll be right in your groove. And how do you find that out? Well, if you were called to be a candy maker, maybe start making candy and see what happens. I don't know. See how good you are at making candy. I don't know. If you're a total flop and you say, well, I'm called to be a chef and you can't put anything together, then maybe you need to readjust that something, right? Or learn. Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah. So based on the claim that you said that, is it safe to assume that you'll most likely do the spiritual gift that you were doing from, like, say, like an example, like you were, teaching, or like your job now, you're assuming that you'll do that in heaven, or like, that'll be your spiritual gift. My question is, if you have multiple spiritual gifts, we're safe to assume that we'll entertain that spiritual gift like in heaven? Totally.
And it could be expanded. And be a little bit different. So I think about, okay, so if I got the gift of teaching, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be teaching in the Messianic kingdom. And who am I going to be teaching? It's not going to be you. I'm going to be teaching mortals that made it through the tribulation. That would be one of my jobs. I would assume, because that's all my whole life has been. So he's not going to waste that. So again, everything is a little bit different, but it might be modified, but it's still going to be at the same root of what you're called to do.
Like, because you put it into practice, therefore you most likely will play that part in heaven as well.
That's right. Okay. So everything's practice here. So what you're learning right now is practice for the next life. And of course you're going to get rewarded here. So it's not just practice. There's big rewards to it, and that reward gets you positions.
It just made me think, if you have the spiritual gift, or you would use one of the spiritual gifts that God's given you, like worship, would you be safe to assume that you'll be worshiping in heaven as well? Or he might be bringing...
Yeah, or leading worship in the Messianic kingdom, or teaching people how to worship. Because what is worship? It's not just singing. Worship is obedience. That's the idea of worship. So you would probably be showing people how to be obedient. Now, we do know that, they're singing in heaven, and we see that in the book of Revelation and whatnot. And so music is always going to be a part of the dynamic, always. And there's worship that goes on. And so that's a big part of it. So how that's expanded, I mean, a lot of times I don't know, but it's definitely going to be a gift that's going to be used because worship is for forever. Forever. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Clear as mud, right? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back and do some current events, okay? Okay, we're going to get going on some current events, things that we're going to talk about. A couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the new thing that's moving into the housing. I think it's prophetic about what's happening in America and around the world, the rental economy. And I think it's a stair step to the black horse. But before I get there, I want to talk about this continual destruction of America with Islam. And I saw some disturbing things yesterday that I do not like. And again, this is part of how the West falls, is if we continue to not treat Islam as we need to, then we're going to fall for these creeps that are trying to take over our country. Now, you probably know this individual. I hope she gets removed from Congress. This is Rashida Tlaib. She's a nut job, crazy, off the chain, nut job, wacko, Islamicist, whatever you want to say. I don't know how someone's in our Congress like this, but she is. I hope they remove her soon. This is her, and if this doesn't make your blood boil and understand that these are people in our country who think like this, if you don't see this as a problem, you're the problem. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay? Listen to her talk about not only Israel, but America. Okay?
They thought they could kill us, rape us, imprison us, violently uproot us from our olive tree farms, starve our children to death, and we would disappear. Well, guess what? Now we're in Congress, and we're every corner of the United States. Y'all, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. They will never truly comprehend, Ya Jama'ah, even after 7 decades, that we aren't going anywhere. We are just getting started. I want to say to all of them, every genocide enabler, look at this room's motherfuckers. We ain't going anywhere. It'll show you, because I want you to be truly present in this city that gave me strength. It's not just Dami Palestiniya, it's that as an American, this city taught me that the political structures that I have to work in, that we all are surrounded by, was built on slavery and genocide and rape and oppression. Detroit taught me that these institutions will never save us. Detroit will remind me constantly, the community mothers, that it's not the genocide-enabling Congress or the White House that will free our people. It is only us. It can only be us. Enabling the genocide in Gaza and dismantling the apartheid system that oppresses Palestinians unifies so many different struggles. You all seen it. For freedom and justice at home and abroad. What's been tested on the killing fields of Gaza is already being deployed right here in the streets of America. What our government is willing to do to Palestinians, they are willing to do to all of you. It is no surprise to me, as the daughter of Detroit, that I see our government that has supplied the bombs and excuses Israel from destroying literally every single day hospitals, communities in Gaza, and manufacturing mass starvation, is also the same government that's defunding healthcare and food assistance programs here in our country. It is no surprise.
Anyway, sorry about the audio was off track a little bit, but I think you got the gist of it. This crazy lady went on a rant, obviously against Israel, but then against America. And it is clear that she's Islamist. It is clear that the audience in Michigan is Islamists. And I'm telling you, if we don't wake up to this Muslim threat, we're going to pay a pretty bad price. When you have someone in Congress like that, and she denigrated the United States, say, we're doing the same thing Israel's doing, with genocide, this and that. Our system is genocidal, rapist, built on slavery, the whole thing. I don't know why you're here other than to try to take over. And that's kind of the message I got from that. There was another girl at this conference, Asha Nazar, and what she said was a really disturbing thing. She was basically telling terrorists how to take out our F-35s that we're sending to Israel, and saying how you could go about doing this. So I want you to listen to this. Again, this is at the same conference in Michigan, and I cannot believe this is happening on American soil. I'm hoping that Kash Patel will arrest this girl right here. Okay? So let's see if we can listen to what she says.
Is that 70% of the cost of the F-35 program actually comes from the supply chain. 70% of this $2 trillion that goes into the supply chain is literally because they need to transport the different components of the F-35 to different locations to assemble them. So what I'm saying to y'all is that if one specific node of the F-35 supply chain is intervened in, it has a huge impact on our people back home. We've really developed a methodology, and then I hope that we can get into this and we can talk about it a bit more through this panel. But what's important for us to know here is that the more that we know, the more that we can do. Knowledge is really power here. And we need to be surgical, we need to be strategic, and we need to be bold in our actions. And so we, instead of taking on a weapons manufacturer directly, we said, let's actually go at the veins in which are carrying these weapons across. This allows us to be able to target them through a multitude of avenues. So what we learned is that Maersk is actually using civilian infrastructure to transfer weapons. And if they're going to use our civilian infrastructure, then what that does is provide an opportunity for everyday people to intervene in the supply chain of death. So it's not rocket science, y'all. It's like you can put one and one together and say, okay, obviously the United States is sending $19 billion worth of military aid over to the Zionist entity. We know that they have this maritime security program that was established to do so. Maersk makes up over 50% of this fleet. Yani, it's one and one. We got it. We know Maersk is a target. We know that they're embedded, and we know that they're profiting off of our genocide, and they're profiting big off of our genocide. Yesterday, Oakland, the Bay Area, us, PYM Bay Area, AROC, the Arab Research and Organizing Center, and USPCN announced a campaign to have the first citywide arms embargo campaign to actually stop the flow of weapons leaving the city of Oakland. And this started with research. We were able to reveal that there were over 280 military cargo shipments that left the Oakland airport for the Nevatim Air Base just since January of 2025.
Okay, so the girl named after the child bride of Muhammad, Aisha, apparently lives in the Bay Area. It doesn't surprise me. This Islamist girl is telling you that the United States is giving the weaponry to Israel, like the F-35s, and we don't ship them all on our military. We use Maersk or other civilian shipping companies to get that stuff over to Israel. What she is saying is that we should target these civilian companies to prevent them, because they're carrying the weaponry to Israel. and that we should target them and intervene and stop them. This right here is a threat to national security when you say we should target our ability, the United States' ability to ship weapons wherever we're shipping them. It doesn't matter if it's Israel or whatever, that if you're planning on trying to stop those companies from getting those shipments of milk, you are actively a national security threat. You are telling whoever, the terrorists that are in that audience, who to go after to stop the shipments that's going to Israel, the F-35 equipment, because it's all in different pieces and stuff, and then it's assembled there. And so she's saying that up in Oakland, they sent off a bunch of weaponry to Israel or whatever. And so that's where you have to start targeting things, and Maersk and these other companies. If Kash Patel doesn't arrest her this week, then something's wrong. Because you don't get away with doing it. This stuff, what she was saying, was all over X today. All over it. I mean, it was spreading like wildfire. And again, I have to imagine that Kash Patel would be on this. This is insane. And Rashida Tlaib should be kicked out of our Congress for saying that about America. You want to call the Palestinians your people, then you go live in Gaza. Okay? You get out of here. We don't want you here. We don't want anyone that wants to take over our country and bring Sharia law here. We don't want that. And I'm telling you, if this is not confronted, these Islamists are going to continue to worm their way. You've got that guy running for mayor. He's going to win, and he's an Islamist and a communist in New York. Mamdouhi, or whatever his name is. I'm telling you, we're going to end up like Europe if this is not confronted. It's got to be confronted, or you're going to see the destruction of the West. Okay, let me move to a pivot to another issue. I'm going to spend most of my time on this one. The rental economy, the circular economy, the World Economic Forum had talked about, Klaus Schwab and all that stuff. Well, I want to show you something what's happening in real estate. And this is an article from Patrick Wood, a good friend of mine. We're going to have him here in a couple more weeks on a Wednesday night. And he had an article about debt-based capitalism is over, gives way to asset-based system. So anyway, he ran an article that he got from another company that did a YouTube video about this. And I want to tell you what kind of is a little bit shocking. It shouldn't be shocking, but it's happening. And I think it's heading towards something, okay? It's heading to this thing that not Klaus Schwab, but the World Economic Forum said, you will own nothing and be happy. Okay, so let's go through this, and I'll help try to understand this. They said everyone's focused on whether we're in a housing bubble. But that's wrong. That's the wrong question. The real question is what happens when an entire generation can't afford to buy homes. Yeah, that's what's happening. Mortgage rates are sitting at 6.5% according to Freddie Mac's latest data. First-time buyers now make up only 24% of the market, the lowest share since 1981. Median home price hit $435,300 in June of 2025. The average household needs to earn over six figures just to qualify for a mortgage. The average American needs to earn $126,700 just to afford a medium-priced home. You tell me who can afford that, okay? A medium-priced home. According to the National Association of Realtors, only 6 million of Americans, 46 million renters, can actually afford to buy a median-priced home right now. That's a problem. 31.3% of all households are already cost-burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Okay? Let's talk about California since we're here. California, the median monthly payment for a mid-tier home over here is over $5,900. This is according to the California Housing Affordability Tracker, second quarter 2025. Okay? As of June of 2025, the median sale price for a home in California is $866,000, more than double the national average of $411,000, according to Rocket Mortgage. That's a problem. That's a problem, guys. People can't afford to live here. The required income, $237,000, literally double the state's median household income. Since January 2020, monthly payments have increased by 82%. When home ownership becomes impossible for most Americans, what's the alternative? You have to rent. That means you won't own anything. Oh, wait, what did I say? You'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, we're heading in that direction, okay? Here's what's happening, though. Yet investors are investing in home building stocks. Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett's organization, quietly accumulated $800 million worth of Lennar stock and another $191 million of D.R. Horton shares during the first half of 2025. According to Berkshire's latest SEC filing from August 14th of 2025, they now own 7.05 million shares of Lennar and 1.48 million shares of D.R. Horton. Why? Builders are not making most of their money selling homes anymore. They're becoming America's biggest landlords through something called build-to-rent. Okay? The build-to-rent sector has exploded by 270% since 2019, with these companies now controlling over 350,000 rental homes across America. The entire business model has changed. They do not care if you can afford to buy their homes anymore. Okay? Warren Buffett's team isn't betting on a housing recovery. They're betting on a housing transformation. But instead of selling those homes to families, they're increasingly selling them to Wall Street or investment firms. That's who's buying the homes now. That's who can afford the homes, are investment firms. The smart money isn't betting on a housing crash. They're betting on a permanent shift in how Americans live. Here's their prediction. It's Econofin that did the article that Patrick Wood is quoting. So according to Econofin, this is our prediction, and you can quote us on this. Within 5 years, the majority of new single-family construction in growth markets will be build-to-rent. They won't own it. It's too expensive. Lennar just partnered with Invitation Homes, the company that owns 80,000 single-family rentals across America. Through their Upward American venture, backed by $1.25 billion from the Centerbridge Partners and Alliance Real Estate, they're planning to deploy over $4 billion to buy and rent out homes. Their partnership also already includes 4,400 homes in Florida, Texas, and the Carolinas. The builders have discovered they can make more money renting homes than selling them. So the average BTR build-to-rent home rents for about $2,181 per month, according to CBRE's latest data. That's a 10 to 40% premium over comparable apartments. And get this, they're maintaining 97% occupancy rates with only 28 to 35% annual turnover. Way better than traditional apartments. Okay? They get bulk sales to institutional investors, guaranteed buyers for entire developments, and they're building exactly what renters want, single-family homes with yards in good school districts. Okay? So they got the model down. Here's the thing about D.R. Horton model homes. D.R. Horton has quietly built over 14,000 rental homes since launching their build-to-rent division in 2019. They're now operating in 33 states with 38,400 homes in inventory for 2025. In just their last quarter, they sold 1,650 single-family rental homes for $313.5 million, not to families, but to institutional investors. You see what's happening here, guys? It's a problem. This is a problem. Phoenix has over 10,000 build-to-rent units with 4,460 new ones under construction. Dallas-Fort Worth, another 10,000 units. Atlanta just added 3,350 build-to-rent constructions. And they aren't random markets. These are the fastest-growing metros in America where population is exploding. But the home ownership is increasingly out of reach for people. They can't pay for it anymore. So basically, they're selling entire neighborhoods to Wall Street, is the idea. Texas alone has 20,000 build-to-rent homes under construction. Markets like Huntsville, Alabama, Jacksonville, Florida are adding over 1,000 units each. The pipeline could increase the build-to-rent inventory by 50% in the near term. Institutional ownership is projected to comprise the majority of capital investment in the asset class by what date? Why does that date keep coming up? Now, if you're not familiar with that date comes straight out of the UN. It's their sustainable development goals. There's like 19 of them. And they want to get it all done by 2030. And that includes energy, that includes saving the planet, the whole thing, every woke project they want to do, including a circular economy. And when I say circular economy, I am talking about things that will be produced, you will use or rent or lease, but you will never own, and you turn that back in. So it's a circular economy. You never own it. It's produced, you rent, and it goes back to them. That's what they had planned for 2030. So here we are in 2025, and this is starting to develop right in front of our face, and no one's doing anything about it. It's happening, and nothing. They're buying them all up. If you're a young person, how are you going to buy a house? You're not. You're going to rent for the rest of your life. If one of my kids is close to L.A., he ain't ever buying a house in L.A., man. The average home, 1,500 square foot, is $1 million. He can't. He's not going to. How much would he have to make? He's not going to have a job making that kind of money. He's going to rent for the rest of his life if he lives in L.A. That's just the way it is. And Bakersfield's not too. I mean, I guess it's the lowest housing in California, but is it? Is it? Here's the millennials. They make up 64% of the build-to-rent demand, which makes sense. They don't make enough. According to industry experts, they have an ownership rate of about 37%. That's 8% lower than previous generations of the same age. 43% have saved less than $3,000 for a down payment. Gen Z, they're only 3% of home buyers market, but a massive presence in rentals. Yeah, they're not going to make any money. They're not making enough money to buy a home. They'll never buy a home. And here's what's happening. And you probably already picked this up already and figured this out. They're not making homes like they used to. They're not making appliances like they used to. They're not making cars like they used to. Everything is made to break down in just a few years. And it's like, what is it? Oh, because they're making disposable homes. See, it's part of the circular economy. Rent, 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 rent. So we're not going to make expensive homes. So because of these cheap homes that are being built, there's over 1,000 Better Business Bureau complaints about construction defects, mold problems, cheap materials. But here's the brutal truth. When you're building homes that sell for $369,000, which is 28% below the national average, you're not competing on quality. You're competing on affordability. So you're going to get a cheap home, and it's going to break down, and you're going to have to replace all that stuff. So that's happening. And then when you go to rentals, the calculus completely changes. The institutional investors buying these properties care about one thing only, cash flow, right? If they can buy homes in bulk of $300,000 each and rent them for $2,200 a month, while a regular buyer would need about $2,500 monthly mortgage payment to buy that same home, they're capturing all the people who can afford a $2,200 in rent, but can't qualify or afford a $2,500 mortgage. That's what's happening. It's just getting bought up by the investors. National Association of Realtors projects existing home sales will increase 3% by the end of 2025 and surge 14% in 2026. You know what that means? More competition for limited homes available to buy, pushing more people into rentals. How are you going to compete with an investor? You can't. And again, it goes back to what we have all said and what they said, you'll own nothing and be happy. And you are watching that develop in the housing market right in front of your face. Your kids and my kids are not going to be able to afford a home like you did. They just won't, especially if you live in California. It is double the national average here to get a home. They're not going to qualify. What kind of job could you make starting out right out of college, making $127,000? $127,000? Holy smokes! What are you talking about? How would you do that? Trust fund, baby? How are you going to do that? You're not going to make that making a minimum wage. You're just not. And even if the government gave you a living wage, you're not going to afford that. Come on, man. I'm telling you, this is killing people. Now, where is this going? And this is where I think it's going. I think it's stair-stepping what they actually want. They want global control. They don't want us owning anything. They don't even want us owning the land anymore. Do you really own your land if you're having to pay property taxes? I don't think so. Because the minute you don't pay your property taxes, what happens, right? So do you really own anything? So the whole idea is the global system will own everything. They'll tell you what temperature to run your air, and we're just basically going to make so many things unaffordable that you will have to rent your car. Look, if you buy, go try to buy a new car right now and look at the prices of the cars. They're not worth that. I wouldn't pay that money for some of these new cars. It's ridiculous. A truck for $80,000? Are you out of your mind selling a truck for $80,000? Are you guys out of your mind? You want to tell these dealerships? You're crazy. But what do you do? And so they're making cars. Do you know why? Why are they making cars so affordable? Because they don't want you owning a car. Because go back to the UN, and what does the UN want? It wants you on public transportation. It wants you riding a bike. It wants you not to own a car. It wants you to save the environment. And it's so stupid. It's not about saving the environment. What is this about? If you don't have any transportation, I can control you better. That's what it's all about. I mean, last time I went to Europe, for goodness sakes, these idiots in Europe is snowing, and they're riding bikes in the snow like idiots. And it's because why? They can't even afford their own cars. They're riding a bike in snow. Stupid. It's just stupid. But then you conform to that. Well, I'm saving the planet by riding my little bike in the snow. No, you're not. You're like a guinea pig in a cage, and you're totally controlled. And that's been the whole movement, right? And so, when you see this, it's very frustrating, because all of us who have played by the rules, we save, we work, we're not out there, spending our money on drugs, and we're not gambling and going crazy with our money, and we're trying to eke out a living in this life. And every time I turn around, it's getting more expensive and more expensive to where I can't afford anything anymore. I don't think I'll be able to retire in California. But it's intentional. And what are they? I mean, Terry and I talk about this on the radio. What's the intention of California? What do they want? A bunch of elitists that live up in the Silicon Valley or LA or whatever, and everyone else is poor. Everyone else is just, peons, peasants. The little peasants, while Silicon Valley and Gavin Newsom run the whole thing. It's a complete socialistic, communistic utopia. It's what they want. Look at the middle class of what's happening. If this doesn't frustrate you, I don't know what does. Your money is being taken from you, and you don't even see it being taken from you. It's being robbed from you because you can't afford anything. When he opened the third seal, I heard a third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on had a pair of scales in his hand. The scales are for economy. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." So this is obviously the tribulation period. We're promised to be removed from that period of time. obviously, so thank God for that. But here's the thing. Do not think for a moment you're not going to see the setup of this. Right? And we're watching it. What is it saying here? A quart of wheat for a denarius or 3 quarts of barley. So wheat is more expensive than barley. And so what it's saying is the economic situation will get so bad in the world during the tribulation that it will take an entire day's work to get one meal. Just one meal. That's how expensive food will be in the tribulation period. So obviously, what is that going to lead to? A lot of starvation. Okay? So that's how bad the economy gets globally. Okay, you can see how that we could stair-step our way. If you can't own anything, everything is so out of price, it's going to come down to you can't even afford the food. Can't even afford. Have you went out to eat lately? Holy smokes. I go and have Mexican food, and it's just rice and beans and tacos or whatever. And I'm walking out of there with a $100 bill for 3 people. What? What did I order? Gold? Did you sprinkle gold on the tortilla here? I could fill up this whole room with rice and beans for $100. What the heck? What's going on? Have you noticed that, or just me? Okay, buy pizza. Come back, get a pizza. We have to get gluten-free, and because we're all jacked up with gluten, and so we got to get gluten-free. So those are double the price of a pizza, right? When you get a gluten-free pizza, you come back with 4 pizzas, and they're like this small because they're gluten-free crust. It's $100. $100 for pizza? Hey, man. What? But do not harm the oil and the wine. That's what ticks me off the worst about this passage. What do you mean? That's referring to the elites. Because how do you know? Well, back in the day, in the first century, everybody could grow barley and wheat in wherever they lived in Israel. Okay? You do that in your backyard, you had wheat and barley. But only the rich had olive trees and vineyards. Only the rich had those 2 commodities. Okay? That wasn't a peasant thing that you could grow in your backyard. So the rich people had the oil and the wine, the olive, and the vineyards. And so when it says, do not harm the oil and the wine, what it's saying is, but the rich elites will still have everything for themselves. They will be eating the steak and lobster while everybody is working to buy 1 loaf of bread for 1 meal. So, and you think about that, is that not just exactly what's happening even right now? The elites in Silicon Valley who are making oodles and oodles of money and live in San Francisco or wherever they live, do you think they're worried about buying gluten-free pizzas costing over $100? Or they're worried about the new truck they want to buy that's $80,000, $85,000, even $90,000? Do you think they even know because they're driving a Lamborghini? That's not even on the radar. They don't have the same language you and I talk. We're worried about paying our bills. They're worried about what their next ski trip to Aspen is, man, or whatever. And what's happening in California, guys, is a microcosm of what this passage is trying to say. This will be the trend going forward. Everyone, the middle class will be eliminated. Everyone will be dirt poor, and only the elites will have all the money. Got it. I'm seeing it now. It doesn't take a lot of faith to believe that, does it? It's happening right in front of our face, and it's going to happen globally. So, do I wish things could change? I hope. I pray to God that the housing market doesn't continue where I can't afford anything. Or my kids can't afford. I pray to God that it may changes, but I don't think it will. I don't have a lot of confidence in these creeps that run our country. I don't have confidence in Gavin Newsom to do the right thing. I don't even have confidence locally. They tear up the roads so bad here in Bakersfield, I'm ready to wring someone's neck. What is the deal? Everywhere I turn, you got the shovel leaners standing around. One guy is looking in a pit, digging, and everyone standing around, 12 guys standing around with their shovels. And they're blocking main thoroughfares in Bakersfield. What are you people doing, Caltrans? I don't know. spending our money, I think. Okay, anyway, enough of my ranting. Okay. But so that's pretty unnerving right here. Okay, so what do we do for faith? It's this. No matter how this goes down, guys, no matter how it goes down, here's your promise from God. I will supply all your needs according to my glorious riches in Christ Jesus. That's it. So I don't care if it gets higher than the cat's back, okay? It might go higher than the cat's back. But somehow God will see a way for us and to provide for us because he's promised that. It says in the Psalms that the righteous do not go begging for bread. Okay? I believe that. Now, will it be tight? Yeah, maybe. But he will provide. And that's what you have to walk away with this. I know this angers me. It angers you probably to see this. It angers me for my own kids. But at the end of the day, that's how close we are. But I have to fall back on the promises of God. He will meet my needs at the end of this. And that's what you're going to have to hang on to, okay? Because it could get worse, okay? Especially if they go digital currency. Holy smokes, okay? So anyway, let's end there and just stay committed and faithful to that promise, okay? That he'll provide for you. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn, even though it's disparaging and gets my blood boiling, Father. You said it would end like this. You predicted it. So it's true to your word. So that means we can trust you. And we will trust you for our provision no matter how things shake down. We know you're our heavenly Father and you will provide for us. We thank you, Father. Bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, God bless you guys. Ron, we got to get the tables up or what? Okay, we're taking in the tables, bringing in the rounds for Senior Strong. So if you could help us, that would be great.